everyone. Welcome to Ham Radio Basics Live, Season 1, Episode 21. Very special guest, Mike from Mike N2MAK. Mike, how are you this evening?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. First thing I'm going to say before we start getting into stuff, I love your channel and I love what you do and I love your passion. It's just,
thank you.
I kind of got wind of you through Twitter and, looked at your channel and you just really kind of, knocked my socks off and really impressed me with what you're doing and how you're doing it. So, first things first, one of the things I usually ask right off the top of the show is, how did you get started in ham radio?
I'm one of the pandemic hams, as I like to refer to it, because, in talking to others, it seems like there's a lot of people that either got their license during the pandemic and whatnot, or there's those that were licensed and it lapsed. And they had to go get relicensed during the pandemic because they were looking for something to do and being cooped up in the house and everything. And so I got two boys and, between school and sports and work and everything else, I coach basketball, I've coached baseball and football. Like I'm always coming or going somewhere. And during the pandemic, I actually had the time because they weren't in sports or anything. They were learning at home. I was working from home, and I actually had the time to put in and study. It was something I've been wanting to do for a while. It was just on the back burner, and my club out here in Rochester locally does testing, or not testing. Well, they do testing, but they do classes for general and tech, and they do them in January and September, and they're about 2 months or so long. But I kept saying, well, I couldn't do it in January because of work, so I'll just put it off and I'll do it in the fall. And the pandemic hit, and there was no classes, nothing. And so I said to myself that fall, I've been wanting to do this for a while. Let me just see if there's an audiobook. And I got the Fast Track Ham audiobook for tech, and I binged that in a matter of a week to 10 days. I took the tech in less than 2 weeks and got it. And the rest was kind of history. I got sucked into the hobby and did all the other audiobooks each month. I tested up each month. And November, was it 2020, I got my tech, and then the general in January. In February, I got my extra. And then I finally got on the air in March.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and what I kind of do is, I'll tell you how I got started was back in 2011. I moved down to Florida. I met this one beautiful woman online, and believe it or not, 15 days after we met, we got married. We've been married 12 years. Okay.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Best thing that's ever happened to me, bar none. I tell you that I married a saint. Okay. I really did. Well, one of the things that I was always interested in was, you make adjustments when you move to Florida. Okay. Everybody talks about the gators and snakes and how warm it is, but one of the other things, hurricanes. Okay. Well, fortunately, because where Tampa's located, it takes an awful lot for a hurricane to hit us because it has to come through the Gulf and kind of up and around because we're on the west coast of Florida. And it doesn't mean that we don't get hit. But I was thinking in terms of emergency communications, cell phone towers go down and boom, what do you do? Mm-hmm. And, everybody was saying, well, yeah, the only real solution is ham radio. Somebody had mentioned GMRS and I'm like, no, okay. So that's how I got started. And I took, and they just unfortunately, I think it was called Ham Test Online. It was a study course.
Okay.
And what was really nice about that was that they rotated the question pool. Every time you took a practice exam, it was a different set of questions. And so that way you weren't memorizing the answer. You got the answer. You knew you worked the problem and you understood that. And I did that in short fashion within 6 months. After doing that, I got my tech. Another 3 months later, I got my general, and another 2 months later, I got my extra, and just running through and through and through. And then after I got my extra, I was all ready to get set and get started. And then life just hit. Okay, my my two sons had moved down to Florida. They moved back to Ohio. A lot of family stuff going on, and I really didn't get started until a couple of years ago, which really kind of frustrated me. And then, this year I finally was able to procure some funds to be able to start, getting my first radio. I still have my radios are still in the box. Okay. I have an IC 7300. It's ready to rock and roll. I have an FT 891 ready to rock and roll. Okay. And, I had worked up to save some money because I wanted to, go with one fell swoop to do this. And then all of a sudden I was getting ready to get on the air. And then all of a sudden, life happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like on a holding pattern until I get that taken care of. One of my favorite channels, and I don't know if you've ever watched him. It's HOA Ham.
Yeah.
Bob, and I had him on, and he lives about 45 minutes from me. Absolutely fantastic channel. And that's one of the things that I'm going to be doing is he just did a video on it was a flagpole antenna, because we're allowed to have flagpoles in our HOA. And Chameleon makes one, and it's real different because it's an interlocking kind of a mast.
Yeah, I just saw that
video on that, which was fantastic. So that's going to be a perfect solution, because it's like just got to dig a 2-foot hole, pour some concrete, get the footer in there, and I'm good to go. And I'm really excited about that. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. As far as that's concerned. So, I see you just absolutely, you got this POTA thing down pat. You really do. It's great watching some of your videos.
Yeah. And I struggle where I first heard of it. I'm going to suspect it got mentioned in the audiobooks when I was studying. But I'm sure I came across it as I discovered some of the YouTube channels when I was studying and everything. And then you start doing research, like what kind of radio should I get? What kind of antenna and this and that. And you can't help but come across channels like for, K8MRD or Ham Radio Crash Course 2.0, all these guys. And POTA's, I think it certainly exploded during the pandemic. People wanted to get out of the house and have something to do. And that was a great activity to go out, play radio, discover some new parks, and just be outdoors. And I kind of had made up my mind as I was studying that this is what I want to do. I want to go out. There's no shortage of parks near me where I am in the Finger Lakes of New York. I can drive just a few minutes and be at a park. I can drive 15 minutes and be at a threefer where 3 parks overlap, which is not common at all. These things occur, but to have so many parks within anywhere from like 15 to 45 minutes from my house, it's amazing. And I know that if you go out to Montana, that might not be the case, but we certainly have plenty of parks here. And I just, I wanted to get out of the house. Like I'm cooped up. I was like, this is perfect. And so I just kind of dove in head first. And to this day, I still don't have a permanent station set up at my house. It's something I do want to do. I'm glad I didn't rush into it, because I've learned so much once I really got on the air and have operated. I've learned so much about radios and about antennas and what my interests are, that I'm glad I didn't kind of rush in and drill a hole and just throw something up. I don't have any restrictions, fortunately, with HOA or anything. Whatever I do, I got to get my wife to sign off on, which is maybe that's a
little tougher than an HOA.
HOA, but eventually I'll probably get something set up. But for now, I absolutely love going out to play radio, primarily POTA. There are some summits. I've done a couple SOTAs, and they're a little bit further away and not as common in New York as they are some other places. But we got them, and I just enjoy it. I've been to so many places that are in my own backyard that I would have never ever gone to if it wasn't for POTA. And I've just seen so many amazing places, and it's just like, wow, we are so fortunate to have some of the parks that we have.
It's so much fun just to be able to go out and do that and play radio. And you mentioned, we have a lot of state parks here in Florida, but see, Florida is a completely different beast. from like Ohio or Pennsylvania where I grew up, because you have to there's some things you got to deal with when you go to parks. One of them is snakes, okay, and I'm not a big fan of snakes, okay, and they're everywhere down here in Florida. Not really, not like in our development, but like if you go to parks and stuff, you got to watch out for them. And of course, the other thing is alligators, and it's just they've been really prevalent this year. And I heard what happened was, we had remnants of a hurricane go through, and I mean Fort Myers got really, which is just south of us, really got slammed. But what happened was, when the wind came through, it knocked a lot of the water out of the fresh lakes that the gators are in, and it dumped a lot of salt water in them. So the gators are active and looking for like a freshwater ponds or lakes. Okay. On top of it being mating season. And because when it's mating season, they're out and you hear them growling and all this kind of stuff. It's the weirdest thing in the world. I mean, you open your door and you're hearing and you wonder what it is, and you know what it is. It's a gator. Okay. And it's either a mating call, or they're looking for a pond, or they're not happy, and it's just it's just a completely different kind of scenario down here. So are you involved with a club up and around in your area?
I am. I wasn't involved when I first got licensed. They weren't meeting at the time. Like a lot of things that kind of shut down, and it was shortly after I got licensed that they started doing some virtual meetings over Zoom and stuff for a little while, until they transitioned back to in-person ones. But yeah, I'm just coming to the end of my second year on the board of directors for our club, and we got one of the larger clubs in I believe the U.S., if not the Northeast.
Wow.
So we got it's usually just a little bit over 500 members.
Wow, and, that's incredible.
So, but if anyone's familiar with Rochester, where I am, and you think about what we have here, and you had a lot of engineers, very smart people at companies like Kodak, Xerox, Bausch and Lomb. We have L3 Harris here, and Harris, formerly Harris RF, which makes a lot of military radios. And so just, right here, I always like to say, there's a lot of smart people. I'm not necessarily one of them. I'm not an engineer by trade at all. But I think it's a very active area and stuff. And so they reached out to me shortly after I got my license, and they asked if I'd be willing to, interested in being on the board, because they wanted to bring in, a new member to get some different opinions and points of view and stuff. And so, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, one of the things, I'm actively trying to get my wife to kind of, poke and prod her to maybe thinking about getting her tech, because what I eventually want to do is get her a decent HT, and in case, a disaster happens, so to speak, when she's on her way home from work, she could still talk to me, or if she has it at work, she can kind of still talk to me. So kind of pushing towards that end. Now there's I think it's called Ham Test Online, and I actually gave away some of those in December when I was having my giveaway during Christmas. And I've talked to a couple of people who I know. What's real interesting, just to let you know too, I have a drone channel, I call it a pretty successful drone channel called Build a Drone Reviewer. And what's real interesting is I've had 4 or 5 people from my drone channel follow me over here, because they're also ham radio enthusiasts, which is really kind of cool. I really, really like that. But anyway, what it's really done is, it's really helped me get a good perspective on things. And, with this Ham Test Online, they basically have a money back guarantee. And I looked at it, and I took some of the practice tests, even though, I'm licensed, and it was real interesting. I found it to be very easy to follow. So, I'm hoping to kind of get my wife, I don't want to force her into it. I want her to do it at her own pace. But I told her, I said, really, if we want to be able to communicate during an emergency, this is really going to be the best way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned at the beginning, how emergency, preparedness is kind of what drove you to the hobby. And that's one of the things that got me interested from the very beginning. Now, Yeah, I've lived all my life in upstate New York. I'm originally from Utica in central New York, but I lived a decade in Binghamton after grad school, and then I've been out in Rochester for a decade now. And in Binghamton, we had two major rivers, the Shenango and the Susquehanna, right there. And we had two significant floods when I was living there. Fortunately, where I lived both times, I wasn't directly impacted. There were still things like, roads washed out, boil water advisories, things like that. But within a span of a couple years, seeing two 500-year floods, and I worked for the state at the time, so I saw a lot of the response firsthand. I really kind of got interested, like, wow, I need to be ready in case of emergencies, because these things happen when you see a mobile home in a river floating down a river. Like it definitely changes your mind when you see that firsthand, as opposed to on the Weather Channel or something. And so it was always in the back of my mind for a few years. It just was a matter of like just kind of finding the time and taking the initiative to dive in and get it done.
That's awesome. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but have you gotten your sons involved with your ham radio activities?
One of them, I jokingly refer to them as the licensed and the unlicensed kids, but I do have a GMRS license, so technically my youngest could use that call sign if you wanted to and operate on GMRS. But yeah, I got my tech, as I said, in November 2020, and checking into some nets and toying around with the HT just around the house, nothing spectacular at the time. My older son at the time took an interest, and my club was starting up the class in January, and he was asking about it, and my wife came to me and said, "Hey, Ben wants to do ham radio," and I was like, "Really? Like he?" You sure? He's like 11 at the time, I think. And I'm like, well, all right, there's no cost. I'll sign him up and he'll do the Zooms. And, so he's studying for his tech while I'm doing my general and extra. And he got licensed, and he wasn't the only kid in the class either. There were a couple other kids his age. And so he got that in March or April of 21, and then the spring he started studying for the general, and he got that July. So he was 11 years old when he got his tech in general, and we've been out for plenty of POTA activations. He's 13 now, so it's not necessarily his primary interest. I don't force him to go out, or anything, but he's still, from time to time, he'll see me checking into a net, and he'll pick up and he'll be like, "Oh, I'm going to check in too," or we'll go out on holidays or vacations and do some fun POTAs, and he enjoys it. But I told him, you got your ticket, that they can't take that away, and I'll pay for your renewal. I don't mind what is it, the $35 or whatever, but he took the time to study and work hard and pass them both. And I think that's great. My youngest has expressed some interest. He's only going into 4th grade, so he's still young, but we'll see what happens in the next year if he decides to push forward with it.
Mike, I love hearing that, because it's like one of the big things. And I did this in some of my early videos, and I think, ham radio does such a great job. I'm talking about the community in general, does such a great job at educating and helping you pass and get your exams. Okay. But I think a lot of where ham radio in general fails is, okay, you've got your license, now what? All right. And a lot of people are not as fortunate as you. And, I'm connected with a club, although I need to get more active. They're not they're not connected with a club. And it's just like, if you don't use it, you lose it, kind of a thing. And I think that's one of the things that I think ham radio can do a whole lot better on is, once, like I said, they do great in educating people and helping them get their license. But once they get their license, it's kind of like it's the wild, wild west. You're on your own, and
Yeah.
I just wish, and I'll start with the ARRL. Now, they're a great organization. Don't get me wrong, but I think they could do a better job of help getting newly licensed hams connected, not only with groups, but also like Elmer's, so to speak. That kind of thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll back up a little bit and say, like, when it comes to taking the exams and studying and learning, everyone learns different. And what worked for me doesn't necessarily work for somebody else. I walked for 2 hours or so every day and listened to the audiobook while I'm walking around, and would take notes on my phone if I heard something that was a good a good way to remember something, or an important formula or fact to remember. And I took notes and I listened, and then I used ham study to take practice tests and questions on my phone, and I was able to spend a couple hours each day doing that, and that's what worked. And I kind of was drinking from a fire hose, and there's a lot of stuff I forgot shortly after. I think I learned a lot of the broader concepts. There was some stuff that was at the time, and this still is to me, trivial, and that I didn't use it, so you lose it. But ultimately, you need to learn enough so that you can get out there and operate. And I think that's where a lot of the real learning takes place, is when you get on the air and and you get to experience things firsthand. The research I put into putting together my first station and what I needed to buy, to buying my first antenna kit to put together, and all these other things like that, you learn a lot. And I realized that because as my son was studying for his general, and I'm helping him along the way, I had only been operating for a couple months at the time, but I'm looking at some of the questions, and I realized I used to have to memorize that, but now I know right off the top of my head what band that is, or how long that antenna is, or what the radiation pattern is, and all this other stuff. And it's because I got my ticket, and then I was able to continue that lifelong journey of learning and whatnot. But I definitely feel, and I've done my best to try to help others out, locally, who have gotten licensed recently, or just trying to get into Parks on the Air or something like that. I've taken a number of people out to help them out with their first activation and kind of walk them through, how Parks on the Air works. But also, I've helped others build antennas or something. A new ham moved into the area who I've known. He's a tech currently, but he came over with his friend a couple weeks ago. Helped him build a 10-meter NFED and 10-meter dipole so that he could operate on 10 meters while he's studying, for his general and stuff like that. And it's important to kind of help others out and give back. And I've learned, not just because of, the studying I've done and the experiences I've had, but because others too have been willing to help and answer questions and reach out. So I think it's important. It doesn't stop at the tests. And I think a lot of that it falls on us, whether there's a club or there isn't a club. Like, it falls on us individually to kind of be there and to be Elmers. I wouldn't have thought a couple years ago I'd be in this situation, that I was so intimidated in the beginning, like I said, drinking from a fire hose, but ultimately it's, incumbent on us to be there for the others, whether they're experienced hams or new, to kind of help be there for each other and help each other out.
Yeah. And one of the things, some of the best advice that I got when I first started out. Well, let me back up a second. Okay. One of the things that I did, because I got hooked up with a club right by where I live, but I'm going to be 65. My birthday's on Sunday and I'm going to turn 65, but I would be the youngest person in that club. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're friendly, but they're not very outgoing. They don't, they're not, do you need any help? Is there anything I can help you out with? It's like, it's more of a social kind of a thing with them, and that's okay. And it works for them. I mean, they have their nets and they do some of that stuff, but you won't see them, out on field day. You won't see them doing a lot of stuff versus the other club that I did end up getting connected with. So in the interim, what I did was, to replace that, I went out to YouTube. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to say this: there are two guys that I learned so much off of: Josh from Ham Radio Crash Course and Jason from Ham Radio 2.0. Jason in particular, he has been so helpful and so friendly. I mean, and patient, and so is Josh, with so many questions that I had to ask them. I mean, I would ask them, and I said, I'm embarrassed, but I'm going to ask you another question. I said, have I exceeded my limit for the day? But they never said that, and that's what I like about both of those two. They want to help people. They're out there, and there's others too. Mike K at MRD, he's fantastic as well. Scott from Ham Radio for Non-Techies, I've had him on the channel. Michael Martins, K8, forget the rest of his call sign. He's up in Wisconsin.
Oh, KB9DBR, yep.
Yeah, just some really great people. And you end up finding some good series of videos. There was a guy, he called himself, it used to be called Ham Cured Smoke, but I'm not sure, forget the name of his channel now. But he has 40 videos on the IC.
Yeah, it's like Ham Radio A to Z.
Ham Radio A to Z.
Yeah.
And same with the 705.
Yep.
And it's interesting. Okay. Finally I was thinking about pulling the trigger and getting a 705. Okay. Well, guess what? I talked to somebody at a smaller ham radio shop over in the state of Kansas where I bought some things before. He's telling me the earliest they'll probably have them is September. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just one of the supply and demand kind of a thing. It's just, that's kind of going on. But no, just to kind of go back, some of the best advice that I've gotten right away, and this is kind of, and what I do is I kind of have I have an email and I call it Ham Radio Advice, and I keep adding on to it when I hear it. And one of the first things that somebody told me, after I got my ticket is, stay away from QRP until you get experienced. Okay. Because if you try to get into that when you're first starting out, you will get so frustrated you may leave the hobby because you don't understand. It's like you get all these things thrown at you and you don't know what QRP is. And it's like, okay, and then somebody sits down and explains it to you that what, you're on low power. Okay. You want to, when you first start out on HF, you don't want to do QRP. You want to go out on a rig that's going to give you probably 100 watts, so you could punch through, okay, and make some contacts. Because that's the most exhilarating thing in the world, is to get out there and punch through and make some contacts. Whether it's a person 20 miles away or whether you're across the Atlantic, it's fantastic to be able to do that. But one of the best pieces of advice is, first of all, they said, don't worry about QRP right now. You just kind of wait for that. And then somebody else said, oh, I need to, what kind of an HT should I get? What kind of an HT should I get? And one of the pieces of advice somebody told me said, whatever you get that's legal in the United States that works where you can make contacts, that's what I would recommend. Okay. Just some of these things, just some basic things. And these are kind of some of the things that I try to pass on as well too. On my channel, and when I get people engaged, and I talk to them about some of these things here. So, so what kind of, I was interested to find out, and it's one of the questions I normally ask everybody is, what kind of equipment do you have, Mike?
Yeah, well, and this is a good segue because I'll share. So, some of the advice, I don't know, I'm sure I've heard this, a bazillion times, but I've definitely learned it firsthand, is that, your first radio is not going to be your last radio. Your first antenna is not going to be your last antenna. And I think that sometimes, hams, we can sort of, fall victim to like the indecision paralysis, or we're going to try to over engineer an antenna that we're going to end up taking down in a year to tinker with anyway, because we're going to think of something better we can do. So that said, when I was looking, I knew I wanted to be portable. I was looking at a G90 or an 891. And I ultimately went with the G90 because I was trying to stay in like $1,000 budget with putting together my first station. And so that's for the radio, the battery, the coax. The Wolf River coils was my first antenna. I don't have an engineering background, so I knew that there was going to be things I'd probably have to buy whether it was something as minor as, wire strippers to a soldering station and everything else. And so I was kind of intimidated at first by all the stuff I was going to need to get to, assemble a station. So I stayed, on a little bit more of a budget side. I figured the $200-$300 I saved with the G90, that's money I'm going to invest into coax. That's money I'm going to invest into antennas and other things. And I'm glad I went that route. When you operate portable for parks on air, you're the hunted station, and 20 watts, in my opinion, is enough. Certainly if band conditions aren't ideal or you're using a poor antenna, then you're going to be a little bit more compromised. But 20 watts, can be fine, especially if you're getting a good wire in the air, like an NFED or a dipole or something. You can absolutely crush it with that. And so I started off with that, but I kind of had this fear of missing out. Like I was like, oh, everyone's got these 100-watt radios. I got to get my hands on one of these. And I had an opportunity to buy a used 7300 from a friend, and I got it. And I mean, it was then all of a sudden it was like shooting fish in a barrel. And it's a great radio. I love it. And then I had an opportunity last fall to get a used 705. And when I did, I let the G90 go to kind of offset those costs, because I figured, I didn't need to have two smaller portable lower power radios and everything. And I missed the G90. I could see myself picking one up at a ham fest if I found a good deal, because I always said it was an antenna tuner with a built-in 20-watt radio. You could tune anything with that radio. But right now I primarily use the 705 and the 7300. And those are absolutely fantastic radios. I use probably just about any antenna I can get my hands on. I love trying new things. It's kind of part of the fun is experimenting, and that's how we learn too.
Well, one of the things, my wife looks at the mail. Oh no, what is it? Another antenna? I'm an antenna-aholic. Okay, I have a problem. Okay, I know some guys, have like 30 HTs and 10 transceivers. Okay, that's not my problem. My problem is antennas. I have 3 or 4 NFED antennas. I got I got some dipoles. My first antenna that I bought was a Chameleon MPass 2.0. And I really liked the versatility of that. Somebody strongly recommended that, and they were great. It was a great suggestion, and it's easy to set up. Just perfect for doing parks on the air, that kind of thing. One of the other interesting things is I think I told you I have a drone channel, and I've actually seen some videos where some ham radio operators get a drone and they attach a release module to it. And what they'll do is they'll tie some paracord with a weight on the end of it, and they'll go high up over a tree, find the branch and drop it and release it, and boom, you get your NFED right away. I mean, it's like no effort here. You're not trying to throw up over a limb or using a potato launcher or anything like that. It's safe, it's targeted, it works. And that's one of the things. I'm going to go back and get. I had a DJI Air 2S, and right now they're getting ready to come out with an Air 3. So the Air 2Ss are like on crazy sale. I'm going to wait for it to maybe go down another 100 or so and probably buy one specifically for the purpose of taking along with me and being able to do that with antennas up there. And it's real interesting that you mentioned the G90, because I know so many people start out with that radio, because and you really kind of nailed it on the head. It's a tuner with a radio in it. I heard somebody said it could tune a piece of steel sitting next to you if you hook it up to it. I mean, it's just that good. And that's one of the better things I think that Xiegu has come out with. I really like them. One of the other things wanted to say, I got to be real good friends. It's real interesting how I got started on, doing my channel and everything. Steve from Temporarily Offline,
Mhm.
and he's had me on. They've had me on Coffee and Ham Radios several times and talking about some topics. And I love the Ape. Okay,
Yep.
Ape has just been absolutely fantastic. But Steve's been great too. He's been another resource who has answered just a ton of questions. And see, that's one of the things here that I really like about the community. You know,
Mhm.
that I find real helpful. Everybody is willing to help people out, and it's
Yeah.
not, you know, and I got to say this, I love the drone community. Don't get me wrong, but people get into their niches, and it's not as, I won't say outgoing, but it's not as, I'll call it maybe user friendly in asking questions, because a lot of times people will post questions and then somebody will go and shoot them down. Now that does happen. It depends on a lot of time when you go out to some of those groups on Facebook. You got to be careful. I mean,
Mhm.
some of them are like some of these guys that run them. It's like they're probably ex-military. Not that my son-in-law is ex-military. My father was in the military. I am a military supporter. But I tell you what, they run these groups like it's the Army or the Navy, and it's just like, it's my way or the highway kind of thing. But and that's such a detriment, because a lot of people will go to those groups to try to
Mhm.
learn, to try to
Yeah.
find something out, and you're being, search through for the answers. Don't be asking that question again, kind of stuff. And it's just like, no, that's not the way, not the way to kind of win over or influence people, kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I think it's something that we see on social media, not just it's not just for ham radio. I think it's for
Yeah.
a lot of other things, and it's a lot easier to be a keyboard warrior. What you're going to say to me over Facebook is a lot different if you're going to say what you're going to say to me face to face in a bar or something. It's
Oh yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
and so it's unfortunate. I always try to be helpful. I try to focus on the positive in ham radio. I enjoy it. I waited 40 plus years to find a hobby, and I absolutely love what I'm doing. I love going out to play radio, and I love being able to help others out. And I've gotten nothing but positive feedback and outreach from others, whether like To and Ape and anyone, whether you interact with them online or run into them at Hamvention or ask a question in the Discord. They're always, everyone's helpful, and there is a really good ham community out there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's some negative stuff, and that attracts attention. And I try to focus on the positive and be helpful.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I learned that, like, in the drone community, I stay away from the negative. I have a show on every Tuesday night, and
Mhm.
it's a fairly popular show for drones. And one of the things that I really do is, I learned early on, I stay away from the negative and I stay away from the
Mhm.
drama. It's real interesting though. One of the earlier shows, I got, I forget what they call it, where somebody called 911, supposedly spoofed my number and said that I was holding a gun to my wife's head while the show was on. I don't know. There's a word for it, and I forget the phrase.
Oh, like swatting or something like
Swatting,
that. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
And
Oh, geez.
apparently they did it from a burner phone in front of our house. They were parked between our house and our neighbor's house, and they came in to our neighbor's house. They drew their guns because they thought it might have been him, because he answered the door, not his wife. So, said, I'll go get my wife.
Mhm.
No, you stand here. Then they came into the house. They didn't pull guns in the house when they were here. And then I explained to them I was having some issues with several people on ham radio channels, just some
Jeez.
real
Yeah.
mondo bizarro kind of people, and they resort to that silly kind of stuff. But you know what? That stuff died down. I reported it. There was nothing ever found, but I kind of had a sneaking suspicion on who would do something like that. So, but it's like you get beyond that and you become adults. I mean, we're all adults here.
Mhm.
Let's just, we're out here to have fun. It's like I go out to fly drones and have a drone channel because it's fun and it's a hobby.
Yeah.
And I play ham radio, and I want to, my goal with my channel, my ham radio channel, is the same with my goal for my drone channel is, I want to teach you the basics of being able, to maybe, purchase some equipment. I can get out there and use it and just keep it real simple. I don't want to, I don't want to overcomplicate things, because there's plenty of guys that can do the deep dives and get you into the sub menus like nobody's business. Like I know Michael Martin's, I think he's the sub menu master of the 891. Okay. Because that thing has so many sub menus to it. It's not funny. And I told him when I had him on the show, I said, my hat is off to you, Michael, because you know how to go deep dive into the 891 and do that. We just had a good laugh after that. But it's true. I mean, he really knows that radio inside and out, and he's one of the experts. And see, that's another good thing is when you've been around the community long enough, when people who have, a certain area of expertise or a radio, or a certain radio they know quite a bit about, and you'll point them in that direction. Like I pointed a number of people, go to Michael's channel, or I'll say, Mike K at MRD. I know he's done a lot on the FT891. Get out there and do that. And,
Uh-oh. Did you freeze up?
Can you hear me now, Mike?
I can.
Okay. All right. We got back. I don't know what in the world was going on there.
All right. I'm thinking, like, is it me, or are the kids hogging all the bandwidth?
No, it's what we're all good with that. So,
okay.
Kind of going to wrap things up here. I just absolutely love your channel. I love what you do. I was going to say, I noticed, you talked about on one of your posts today on Twitter on being able to help somebody out. And, that's what, I'll tell you what, I don't know about you, Mike, but that's one of the things I really get immense satisfaction out of, is being able to help people, like either with their drones or with ham radio, when they ask a question and you're able to answer it. And, one of the things I'll say is, if I don't know the answer, I'll go out and find somebody who does, or I'll find the answer for you. It's so satisfying when you're able to do things like that.
Yeah. And I remember how I felt when I was, on my journey studying and taking the tests. And again, back to the fact it was during the pandemic, and there was no in-person interaction. I'm watching YouTube videos. That's how I learned about radios. I didn't see another radio in person that was not mine until about 2-3 months after getting my extra. And so I kind of felt like I was all on my own, and it's intimidating that there's a lot to take in with this hobby. I want to be able to give back. When that one of my buddies reached out, it was over a year ago. He was recently licensed, wanted to get into POTA. He asked an antenna question. And I'm like, oh my gosh, where do I start? And so I'm like, if you don't want to read the entire email, because I'll answer it, let me know if you want to get together soon, and we'll go out. And I brought out the Wolf River coil so he could see a vertical. I brought out an end-fed half wave with a mast so he could see how to guy it, and we set that up together. And then I brought out a random wire with my throw line, and we put that up in a tree so he could see 3 different types of antennas. and see, you know, how you set them up, what works well with his radio. He had a Yaesu 991, and you know, just get a feel for things. Because I remember I didn't have that opportunity. We were all cooped up, and you know, I was just learning from YouTube and stuff. I didn't have the opportunity to try before I buy and and stuff. But we had a blast, and you know, he's doing well, and now he's Elmering other people a year down
That's
the road.
awesome.
And that's what I want to see. And that just, I mean, it made me feel so good to see that and stuff, because that's why we're helping others out, so that they can help others, and we can continue to grow the hobby. And we're all learning from each other at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how new or how advanced you are. We're all learning from each other. Somebody I helped with their first POTA activation a couple months down the road, he helped me learn FT8, because I had only done sideband for the first year, and I'd never done digital modes. And trying to set those up with the G90 is not easy to begin with.
Oh yeah, that would be a real challenge.
But we're all learning from each other. So you know, and there is a great community out there. So.
Well, I got a couple more questions, and then we're going to kind of wrap things up. Okay, what's your dream radio that you eventually want to get someday?
Oh, geez. I think the dream radio would have to be something like the Yaesu 857, something that's mobile, all band, all mode, which, you know, they don't really make. The closest is like the ICOM, you know, 7100. But I would love to have something that's all band, all mode, so I can do HF, VHF, UHF. But what those two radios kind of lack is a color display, a tuner, and so, you know, I hopefully, because in the ATOS would be which you can use with the 857, and I think that will do at least 2 meters, so you can get up to VHF with just that single antenna and radio. Something like that, I think would be absolutely great. I'd even settle for something if it was like 25 watts. And it was all band, all mode, you know. But I don't see anything like that on the horizon. You know, I'm not the only ham that's been wishing for like a refresh of the 857 or the 7100.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned the 7100, and that's one of these things, because I swear, if I find one at a ham fest or a swap meet, my checkbook's going to get, my bank account's going to get real light. I'll tell you that if I find one. I had a chance to get one about 6 months ago, and I passed on it, and now I keep kicking myself 3 ways to Sunday. One of the other things that you know, I'm looking for at a Hamfest is an Elecraft tuner. Okay. You know, I know T.O. talks about it and raves about it, and I'm like, you know, I got to try to find one. I went out there. I spent a good half day out on boards and forums and things, and looking for one. And you know what? They're just not out there right now, because anybody, when they go up for sale, it's gone before you can even sneeze. You know, it's so, you know, and like to try to buy one new, forget it. It's like probably about a year wait to probably get one. So I mean, you know, it's like one of those things. But that's on my list of things, like at a ham fest. So when I think you probably answered this earlier, but at a ham fest, you know, what's your one item that you're really still kind of looking for in a ham fest?
I don't know that I have, you know, one. I tend to be looking for a lot of the smaller things. Like one of the things recently that I was looking for when I was at our ham fest out here in Rochester was I was looking for the cap covers to go over the BNC. I have some for PL 259 for my coax, because I do a lot of portable operations now. I'm, you know, spitting distance from Lake Ontario, and well, it's not always beaches there. There's times I'm on a beach, but there's also times I'm on a mountain or in the woods, and it's for protection. Just want to cover the ends, because again, I'm operating portable, and I had plenty of those that I got at Dayton last year. But I struggled, and I looked for those this year in Dayton. I couldn't find any BNC cap covers. I looked for them at our local ham fest. Eventually, I was getting some stuff from Soda Beams, and I saw that they sold them, so I got a bunch from there.
Okay,
but it usually tends to be small things like that, like maybe some adapters or or just like I said, like coax covers or little things like that. Some of the smaller things. Other than that, I was recently looking to see if I could find like a really like a 6 meter sideband radio, an older one that does like 6 meter sideband or 10 meters. Like I'm thinking, something like that I could put in the garage temporarily as we're going to the peak of the solar cycle, and there might be some opportunities to do some stuff on 6 or 10. And pretty easy to put up an antenna and whatnot. Just something older I could just have running most of the time, just for fun in case there's a good opening. But
well, one of my places that one of these websites that I need to really kind of stay away from is Quicksilver out of Connecticut.
okay, yeah,
I mean, they are just, to me, they're the bee's knees as far as anything to do with power connectors, power poles, that kind of thing. I think West Mountain Radio, I think that's the name of them as well.
okay.
These are places that I could spend a lot of money. I mean, just,
Yeah.
and so, it's like, well, I told TO, and this was so funny. It was like 3 videos in a row, and I forget what he did. Well, one of them was, it was the special the Chameleon ran on the battery and what else? The charger that came with that in the kit. He did that. Boom, I got that. He did another video. I went out there. I think it was I'm not 100% sure what it was. But I went out and this next video and I bought that. And there was a third one and I ended up buying that. And I told him, I said, TO, you are costing me a lot of money right now with your videos. It's just like, why let's just why don't you do like a POTA or something like that? And just so I don't have to go spend some money.
Yeah, it can certainly be a pricey hobby. I've done some antenna builds. I'm not in it, like I've said before, I'm not an engineer. But I put some kits and stuff together with good success. But at the same time too, my time can be limited sometimes, and I can only get so much time. So it's a matter of, do I want to spend hours working on this, or would I rather have hours that I can spend playing radio or doing something around the house or with the kids? And so sometimes there's these trade-offs. But in my last video I did, one of the hams, I was in Utica recently, and he brought out this homebrew vertical that he put together with all spare parts, things that he picked up on the curb and everything. And it was 17-meter vertical that he can change out for 20 and 40. And there's a lot you can do in this hobby too, with limited budget. If it's a matter, you're going to invest the money, you're going to invest the time. And that I kind of go back and forth between the two. Everyone's different, but it can certainly add up, especially if you're watching a lot of these the videos. It's
Well, one of the pieces of advice I can offer to you, being that I'm a grandfather and all my kids are way out and way grown up and all that kind of good stuff. Default to spending more time with your sons. I can tell you that is time and money that is, well worth the investment. Whatever kind of time you can spend with them, do it. And that's why, when I was previously married and had the kids growing up, I would put a lot of my hobbies aside to spend time with them and do things with them. And, it's always important. And I think it left a pretty good impression on them. And at least 2 of my 3 are still communicating with me. So that I consider that a win-win. And, I got 2 wonderful granddaughters that we're anxious to see. So all in all, I just feel real good and real fortunate. And now that I'm close to retirement, it's time to go ahead and play radio. So I'm having fun. I can tell you're having fun and you're enjoying it. And, yours is a channel. I'm kind of, it perplexes me why your channel hasn't grown, Mike, because I'll tell you what, you put out some great content out there, and I'm going to do all I can, because I have a Facebook group and a Facebook page. I'm going to do all I can to help promote your channel, because you have a wealth of great information on there. You put out great videos, and I want to see you kick up there. I mean, I jumped up right away to about 1,400 subscribers, and then I've been stagnant for several months. And it ends up, YouTube is a game, and it's just like, I wish I could say that I figured it out. I've reached a saturation point on my drone channel because there's so many people that have started drone channels. Well, what's different is there's not many people that have started ham radio channels, and it kind of bodes in our favor. And I really think you are a diamond in the rough that's waiting to be discovered, because you just really crank out some great videos. And like I said, I'll do my best to really kind of get the message out about your channel, Mike, because you do a great job.
Oh,
really.
I appreciate it. I was reluctant at first because I kind of, you get limited time to go out and play radio, and I was like, do I really want to spend all that time, shooting B-roll or editing and all that other? And so I was a little reluctant at first, but I kind of, my sons were telling me, oh, you should go out and do it. But I looked at it as a way to give back, because I'm thinking, well,
Yeah,
I've got, whether I'm trying out some new gear or just going out having fun, getting on the air, it figured if someone can be encouraged or learn from what I'm doing, then it's worth it. So, and I've gotten some, really good comments that mean a lot when I hear that people are, that really appreciated a review, or they liked what I did, or they're going to go try this and make this antenna now. And I'm just happy to help out. So I haven't figured out a whole lot. I'm still learning as I go along, as far as YouTube and all that's concerned, but I appreciate the support and the feedback.
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the things I like to do, on this side as well as on the drone side, is help build up channels and get channels out there that are really putting out a good message. And you consistently put out a good message with your videos, Mike. And, I really have enjoyed this time with you. We'll definitely get connected again and have you on again, and hang on after we close out.
Yep.
But I want to thank everybody for stopping by tonight. I know Brian was here. I know Chris was here as well too. Thank you guys for stopping by. Really appreciate that a lot. We're cranking up. I have Shane on next week, and in 2 weeks I don't know if you've heard of them or not. Their channel name, they call themselves Airheads.
Yes.
Yeah. They're out of Pensacola, and I'm really
great.
looking forward to having them on. They really have a lot of fun, and it's a very different kind of channel, but they have a lot of fun, and I want to get them on, because that's what I want to get the message out. And I think, Mike, once you find out that this hobby is fun, it's kind of infectious. It kind of gets out there, and I think that's good. And one of the tips that I got early on in ham radio, and I've kind of kept that in the back of my mind all the time, saying, if you need a cheat card for ham radio and you've been in it for 5 or 6 years, keep using it, okay? Because it encourages others to do things like that, like a laminated sheet. Like when I first got started out, like all the bands, and looking like, okay, where are the bands, and you look at the band plan, and from ARRL, that's all good. Translate it into something that you can understand, that makes it easy for you, and clears up your confusion. So when, oh yeah, I want to go to 10 meters. Oh, I want to go. It makes it so much easier for you to do something like that. So, but anyway, Mike, thank you so much again for stopping by. We'll definitely get you on again sometime. This was a very enjoyable hour. And again, I want to thank everybody for stopping by tonight. And as always, guys, it's a great day to make a QSO. 7-3s, everybody.
Yeah, 7-3. Thank you.